want to start with something a little different today. Not a fact, not a number, just a question. How long have you been thinking about this? Because I talk to people who have been sitting with the Social Security timing decision for months, sometimes longer. They've watched the videos, they've run the spreadsheets, they know the break-even math, they know about delayed retirement credits, they know that every year they wait past full retirement age, their benefit grows by roughly 8%. They know all of it, and they still haven't decided. And here's what I've started to notice about that. The problem isn't the information. There's plenty of information. The problem is something else, something the information can't actually fix. And I want to talk about that today because I think it's the part of this decision that most people are quietly living with and nobody ever names directly. Let me tell you about 3 people. They're composites, versions of conversations I've had and situations I've seen repeated over and over. The first person is 64. She retired earlier than planned. Her company downsized, she took a package, and suddenly the timeline she'd built her whole plan around compressed by about 3 years. She has savings, not a huge portfolio, but enough to bridge a gap. She knows she can wait to claim, but every time she sits down to actually make the decision, she finds one more thing to check, one more article, one more scenario in the spreadsheet. The second person is 68. He waited. He did it right by most measures. He's been drawing down from his IRA, letting the Social Security benefit grow, and he's about 18 months away from 70. But lately, he's been second-guessing. What if something happens before he gets there? What if the rules change? He's not spending. He's not enjoying the retirement he worked for. He's waiting for a guarantee that doesn't exist. The third person is 66. She's married. Her husband claimed at 62. They needed the income at the time, and it was the right call. Now, she's trying to figure out her own timing, but she keeps getting caught in the math of how the two benefits interact, and the more she models it, the more she feels like she's missing something. 3 different situations, 3 different sets of factors, but the same feeling underneath all of them. I don't want to get this wrong. That fear, I don't want to get this wrong, is doing a lot of work in this decision. More work than most people realize. And here's the thing about that fear. It sounds like a reason to keep researching. It feels responsible. It feels like due diligence. But what it often is, and I want to say this carefully because I'm not dismissing the research, is a way of staying in a place that feels safer than deciding. Information gives you the feeling of control. Another video, another scenario, another variable, all of it feels like movement. But it isn't, always. Sometimes it's just a more comfortable version of staying still. The factors that actually influence this decision are real. Longevity matters. Your health history matters. Whether you're married matters enormously. The survivor benefit dynamic for a couple is one of the most underweighted pieces of this entire conversation, and I'll come back to that. Your portfolio size, your tax situation, whether you're still earning income, all of it matters. But, and this is the part I want you to sit with, every one of those factors is pointing you toward a real answer. They're not generating uncertainty, they're resolving it. The uncertainty you feel isn't coming from the factors, it's coming from the fear. Here's where I want to shift the frame entirely. Because I said at the start that I'd be talking about the Social Security timing decision, and I am. But what I'm really talking about is the gap between knowing enough to decide and actually deciding. Most videos close that gap with more information. I want to try something different. I want to ask you a question. Not a rhetorical one, an actual question I want you to sit with. What specifically are you afraid of getting wrong? Not making the wrong choice in general. That's too broad. I mean the specific version of wrong that keeps you up. Is it that you claim too early and leave money on the table if you live a long life? Is it that you wait too long and something happens? Health, rules, circumstances, and you miss the window you were protecting? Is it that your spouse will be left in a difficult position if the decision you make today turns out to be wrong 10 years from now? Because each of those fears points to a different decision, and they don't all point the same direction. The person who's most afraid of running out of money, of longevity risk, of the portfolio not lasting, is usually best served by delaying. A larger guaranteed benefit, inflation adjusted for life, is the closest thing to insurance against that fear. Research from the Social Security Administration's own actuary tables supports this consistently. For a healthy 62-year-old, the break-even point on delaying to 70 falls somewhere between age 78 and 82. Live past that, which for a healthy woman today is more than likely, the delayed benefit wins significantly. The person who's most afraid of something going wrong before they get to claim, health, unexpected change, a sense that the future is less certain than it used to be, that fear is also telling you something real. It might be telling you that certainty now matters more than optimization later, that a smaller guaranteed income you actually have is worth more to you psychologically than a larger one you're still waiting for. Neither of those fears is irrational. What's irrational is letting both of them run simultaneously, which is what happens when you keep researching instead of deciding. Both fears stay alive, neither gets resolved, and you stay stuck. I personally think the most underrated factor in this entire decision is not longevity, not taxes, not portfolio size. It's honesty. Specifically, honesty about what you're actually afraid of, because the fear is usually much more specific than making the wrong choice. And when you name it specifically, write it down, say it out loud, the decision tends to get much cleaner. I've watched people go from months of indecision to clarity in a single conversation, not because they got new information, because someone finally asked them what they were actually protecting against. And once you know that, once you're honest about the specific fear, the factors stop feeling like a maze and start feeling like a map. Let me come back to married couples for a moment, because I want to say something about this that I think gets lost in the factor-by-factor breakdown. When you're making this decision as a couple, you are not making one decision. You are making two decisions that interact. And the most important interaction is the survivor benefit. When one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse keeps the higher of the two benefits. Just one, not both. Which means that the higher earner's claiming decision is not just about their income in retirement. It is about the financial security of whoever lives longer. For a healthy couple at 65, there is roughly a 50% chance that one of them lives past 92. That is not a rare outcome. That is a coin flip. And yet, when I ask couples what they're optimizing for in this decision, they almost always describe it as their combined income during retirement, not the single benefit that will carry the survivor through what could be a decade or more alone. That is the one factor, in my experience, that changes the most minds when it finally lands. The higher earner delaying to 70 is not just a personal income decision. It is, in many cases, the most meaningful financial act of care they can make for their spouse. This may not apply to every situation, your specific numbers, your health history, your age gap, your other income sources. All of that matters more than a general rule. But I'd encourage any married couple to run the numbers specifically on the survivor scenario, not the joint income scenario, the survivor scenario. It tends to clarify things quickly. There's one more thing I want to name before we get to the end of this: the earnings test. This is the factor that creates the most confusion for people who retire before their full retirement age, but still want to do some work, consulting, part-time, whatever it looks like. In 2026, if you claim Social Security before your full retirement age and you earn above roughly $22,320, a portion of your benefits gets withheld. Not permanently, it gets recalculated and added back when you reach full retirement age, but it does affect your cash flow in those early years, and it catches people off guard. The right decision depends on your numbers, not someone else's situation. But if you're in that in-between phase, retired but still earning, this is the one technical factor worth understanding completely before you claim. It's the kind of thing that feels like a technicality until it quietly reduces your monthly check. So here's where all three of those fragments from the beginning connect. The woman who keeps finding one more thing to check. The man who's been waiting 18 months from 70 and stopped enjoying his retirement. The woman trying to model two interacting benefits and feeling like she's missing something. They don't have an information problem, they have a clarity problem. And clarity, real clarity, the kind that lets you actually decide, doesn't come from another factor. It comes from answering the question you've been carrying around without quite asking it. What am I actually afraid of getting wrong? Because when you answer that honestly, not with "I don't know," but with the actual specific fear, the decision usually isn't as complicated as it felt. The factors are real. The math is real. The break-even points and the IRMA thresholds and the survivor benefit dynamics, all of it is real and it all matters. But the factors are a map. You still have to look at the map and decide where you're going. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. Not an answer, just something to sit with. If you already knew, if you stripped away the research and the spreadsheets and the videos, and you just ask yourself honestly, what does your situation actually call for? What does the fear underneath the question tell you? You've done the research. That part is done. The answer was never in another video. It was in the question you kept not asking yourself. If someone you know has been sitting with this decision longer than they expected, quietly carrying it, this might be the right thing to share with them. Not because it has all the answers, but because sometimes what we need isn't more information, it's someone who names the right question. If this one helped you see something differently, that is all I ever hope for. Give it a like if it was worth your time. And if someone you care about is figuring out retirement right now, share this with them. I will see you in the next one. The spreadsheet can tell you the break-even age, but it can't tell you which fear you're actually making this decision around.